What is happening, folks? Start a revolution, Jig Squad. Thursday night, Jig night. All right, folks. Are we ready to go tonight? Welcome to Jig Squad. I'm Mike Murphy. We are here. We can't do that again. I don't know why I hit the button again. Very excited to be back. It is summertime. I am not working. And I am excited to be planning for Jig Squad and doing some future planning and some cool things coming up. And yeah, I'm excited to be back. So welcome to everyone in chat. If you're watching on replay, I welcome you as well. Michael Bradley, Fishing with Gramps, Gators, Clint, what's happening? Everyone else will be popping in as this thing always seems to go, right? That's how the streams work. So a little shop talk first before we kind of get to our guest tonight, which I'm really excited to have on. What is new? Here's the exciting thing for me. I have a very limited run, and I could care less. People, it doesn't seem like everyone likes stickers because no one wants to buy stickers. But regardless, I got magnets coming. One is it's kind of like a Pirates coin. It says "In Jigs We Trust," and then the other one is it's kind of looks like a stamp, but it's kind of like USA themed. It's super cool. It's on my Instagram. David told Daniel T, what's happening, guys? They're really cool and they're magnets. So I have an extremely limited run of them. So when I post them, if people want them, they should be sending me messages and let me know that you want the magnets. But basically, I'm going to sell the magnet. It's a 2-pack. I'm going to sell it for $10. They're awesome. People are going to want them. I'll wind up making more in time. But when I say extremely limited run, and I'm keeping a few for myself. So, but anyway, we are here tonight to talk about all the standard things that we've. Oh yeah, Gramps, I've got to send you. Oh, did you get mine, Gramps? I think I sent some your way. I lose track, right? I'll always take stickers, brother. I love them. Like a little bit. I need a little bit of Gramps green in my life. What's up, Andrew? Fishing the 262. All right. So listen, tonight we talk about football jigs. We talk about chatterbaits. We talk about flipping and pitching jigs, all with unique and different names. But tonight, you guys know how I am. I'm a homer. I always love my hometown people. We have Angler Assets in the house tonight, and listen, I'm going to pimp them a little bit here because this is Jig Squad, and we're gonna be talking about Gramps. I hear you on that, buddy. We're gonna be talking about jigs tonight, but this guy, he makes a really good spinnerbait. He makes a really good spinnerbait available on Tackle Warehouse. So I don't know how much I'm going to talk about that tonight, but then again, this is a phenomenal designer, and I'm super excited. He's from here in Illinois, the capital, and I'm going to throw him in right now, Mr. Rob Danielson from Angular Assets. Let's get him in. Rob, welcome to Jig Squad, buddy.
Thanks
not
for having
not
me
spinnerbaits. Welcome to Jig Squad.
I know you got to get the spinnerbait talk in a little bit.
You are allowed to talk spinnerbaits tonight too, because I think there's some crossover when we talk about skirt design and patterning and things like that. So, but welcome to Jig Squad. How are you, buddy?
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to talking what we talk about.
Absolutely, buddy. So as we get going here, I'm sure we're going to get into all the juice, but why don't you tell us a little bit about you and how Angler Assets came to be, and a little bit about the company history and you and making jigs?
Well, it all started back. I'm 57. I graduated high school in '82, and I started fishing tournaments right around that time. I was at the O'Hare Expo boat show, and I was walking by the Shimano booth, and Denny Martin was there. And Denny Martin started CBFA and ran Northland Bass tournaments on the chain of lakes. And he corralled me and a buddy of mine, Norm Ebert, and said, "Hey, why don't you guys start thinking about talking fishing, talking fish tournaments?" I was like, okay. So I kind of just jumped right into it. Basically, I think it was the year after I graduated. And fishing the chain of lakes, I mean, back then,
oh yeah,
it was tough. I don't know how it is now. I haven't fished it in years, so I think it's probably a lot better than it was back in the 80s and early 90s. But
it's all cyclical. Like it gets all these bodies of water get pressure for a while in northern Illinois, and then kind of, they come back again though.
Yeah, because I mean, back then, those tournaments they were having were like 70 boats. And so there was a big turnout, a lot of pressure. And, you know, you'd be in some coves and it'd be just a wagon train of boats. So we were always looking for something different, basically, to throw. And we started making some spinner baits. That kind of is what started it. We were doing short arms because there weren't too many short arms. There was the Fleck Weed Vader or something like that back then.
And what years are these, Rob? What are you talking?
In the 80s.
Okay.
Early 80s, mid 80s. I moved down to Springfield in like 94.
Okay.
So
all right.
I fished there for, over 10 years or so.
Okay.
But we started making different spinner baits and then different jigs and, different colors and just trying to be a little bit different than the production stuff that was out there. And then it just kind of grew from there,
That's awesome. So that's the 80s. And like you guys, so it wasn't just you by yourself. You were doing this with a group of guys, would you say? Other guys were starting to do the same thing?
No, it was just a couple of friends of mine that we were, I'd make them and we'd use them. And, then I moved down to Springfield, joined a bass club. And that's when I really got into it. I started making them a lot more, selling them to club members. And then got some interest from, outside the area. And then I basically focused on spinner baits quite a bit.
Okay.
And then came up with my own jig style for the hybrid pitching jig, and had a custom mold made of that and started selling that. And it's a great all around jig. And I'm kind of jumping ahead years and years, but
that's all right. That's all right.
When the Shield store came into town, I went to their grand opening, and
I wanted to ask you about this. Yeah, talk about Shields a little bit, because so besides being in Tackle Warehouse with your spinner baits, your predominant carrier of your jigs is Shields.
Yeah, and I've kind of kept it small just because I'm trying to get bigger, want to get bigger, but it's so tough, and then especially the last couple of years with the all the supply chain woes and that, it's been an issue. But next year looks pretty good. But Shields was really good. They wanted to go with some local companies, and they took me on, and they sell all my jigs and basically all my spinner baits too.
Rob, they push out? So that's the Shields in Springfield, Illinois. Do they push out to the other Shields as well? You're only local?
That store. And what they like to do, they like to see if you can handle the quantity that you're selling at that store, and then if it's good, they'll bring you into other stores.
Right. So for everyone that's in chat right now, and then people that we watch on replay, there'll be more people jumping in, right, as the evening goes along too. But so here's the thing, and I'm sure this is the same. I just know this is how it was in the Chicago area, right? But it's the same thing everywhere you go. So whether Rob was up in the northwest suburbs on the chain of lakes, or anyone else in the country, word of mouth is a big thing, right?
Yeah.
And so when somebody knows you make a good lure, whether it be a spinner bait or a jig, that word spreads. Like I always, everyone knows that, Rob, like I even told you about this, like just my friendship with Ryan Whitaker from Tightrope Jigs, right? Like that's how kind of he did his thing, fishing the tournament scene, and everyone was buying crack from the dealer.
Right.
That's kind of what it was. But I will say this, and I want to highlight this for a second, because for people to be chasing down the guy that makes spinner baits is a big deal, right? And I'll tell you why I say that, because I honestly think the intricacies that go into making a good spinner bait, a lot of people don't know what those elements are, right?
Right.
And so when people find a good spinner bait that's not going to blow out, and you're going to be able to change retrieve speeds and different things like that, like good spinner baits is a big deal. And the thing is, so anyone in the audience that isn't a spinnerbait fan, right? Or you don't fish them all the time, or you don't know whatever. Let's say you're not, I don't use spinner baits all the time anymore, right? But so you actually have a couple of guys, and I see them on the poster behind you.
Yeah.
Right. You actually, for such a small company, that's why this is so interesting to me. For such a small company, you got guys on the pro tour that are using your spinner baits exclusively, right?
Yeah. Well, I've said that this business and the fishing industry as a whole is awesome. Everybody wants to help out everybody. I haven't run into too many situations where, you have issues with people.
There's some trolls under the bridge.
I know, but I just,
I get what you're
just
saying.
goes by the wayside. I happened to run into some of the right people at the right time. And Brock Mosley was one of them. I met him through another angler that I was working with.
Yeah.
And it was before Brock was on the Elite Trail.
Yeah.
And he was fishing the Opens and a bunch of FLW tournaments. And he's kind of a shallow water fisherman, jigs, spinner baits, chatterbaits. He likes that. So he liked my spinner baits, fished with him for a little bit. And then, we basically became friends and partners. And when he's not throwing a chatterbait or a jackhammer, he's throwing one of my spinner baits. So, I try to get him to throw the spinnerbait a little bit more, but that jackhammer catches him. So, but
and I got to say one more thing about that. Those, see, I had to do it. I'm laughing because Brian Schmidt is in the chat, and Brian Schmidt makes a cool spinnerbait too. So like, I'm gonna have to go back and have like a special spinnerbait show and have like you, Brian, like we're gonna have like a panel of people on and do a spinnerbait.
I'll tell you, the spinnerbait and the jig story is very much the same. It's like I was looking for something different. I used double Indianas, different vibration. You couldn't buy double Indianas much in the stores. So I made those. I made them with the painted blade. This is hot chartreuse.
Here, hold it. I'm going to make you big.
That number 3 Indiana. Yeah. And then that's paint, it's chartreuse and then gold blade, both double Indianas. And it was stuff like that piqued people's interest basically.
Yeah.
And then I sent a few samples to Tackle Warehouse and they got back to me 3 days later and they're like, hey, we want, something different. We want to carry you. And they've been really good. So, and I've got a whole bunch of spinnerbaits going out to the next week because I've been out of stock with them for quite a while, but we're catching up. So the same thing with jigs too. It was, different colors.
Yeah.
I sell my football head, which is a rock star, and I basically cut it with the spider cut already, just so it looks a little bit more like a crayfish.
And that's your rock star. That's what you call your rock star.
Right. Yeah, it's a 60 degree. It's a Gamakatsu. I call it their J hook. I'm not sure the number on it, but it's a medium wire hook. I don't fish much deeper than 20 feet with the football jig. So the gauge of that hook is really good. I use 15, 17 pound line and it locks them up. And what I like about this hook mostly is that, I'm trying to show you, that there's not a whole big round bend here for that thing to rock in the fish's jaw. When it gets hooked, it basically sets right there. And you lose very few fish with this jig.
That's not a straight O'Shaughnessy, is it?
No. It
looks like a wider gap.
It's like in between an O'Shaughnessy,
Right. But the same concept on the back, instead of a regular bend, it's got that kind of profile on the back.
Yeah, and I just feel that locks them, and the area from the point to the bend's a little bit longer too.
Yes.
And that seems to, it goes through. You'll double hook fish with these. It kind of goes in, out, and
Yeah.
We lose very few fish with that. And it's
and what sizes, Rob? You're making those in
half and 3/4.
Half and 3/4.
Yeah, half and 3/4. And I kind of don't like to wait, and so I throw 3/4 a lot, and just keep good bottom contact with that. But
Yeah.
and it's got a 60-degree line tie, and I
Mm-hmm.
know on some football jigs, if I was fishing a lot of deeper water, I'd probably make like a thinner wire hook and have a 90-degree just for a little bit better bottom contact. That way, if it's got a
Mm-hmm.
90-degree angle on it, it's going to keep it, digging on the bottom a little bit more than this 60.
Yeah. Uh,
So,
it's interesting because all those elements are all true, right? Like and the thing is, like, and I'll say this, you're the jig maker, right? I, but one of the things that I always talk about is, I call it the river rat technique, right? You learn to fish things in different conditions depending on what you have. But it's funny you say that because, like the weight thing is a big deal, right? Because like, I tell people all the time that a predominant amount of my tube fishing, right, and which isn't a skirted jig, but the point of this is the weight is a predominant amount of my tube fishing. When I learned to fish the south end of Lake Michigan, it was different than fishing up in other structured areas, whether it be further up north with, I'm fishing, break walls, rebar, and chunk
right.
rock. And I want that thing to drop as fast as possible. So I always wanted a heavier weight, which is interesting. But when you fish a jig, a skirted jig, that there's a lot of material there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, that slows down the rate of fall so significantly. I almost find it to be near impossible to throw anything under 3/8.
Mm-hmm.
I really do.
Yeah.
I just that's how I think about it. And of course I have specific parameters of what I'm going to use, what type of rod I'm going to use with a jig, right? So when I'm using 3/8 and up, it's always going to be a bait caster, right? You won't catch me using a spinning rod with skirted jigs often
Right.
unless it's some real micro finesse type of thing.
Right.
But yeah, I agree with you on the weight. I want that sucker to get down on the bottom. That's where that type of jig shines. And if you're not fishing it like that, then in my opinion, you're retrieving it. I'm not throwing a skirted jig to get a reaction bite on the fall. I'm throwing a skirted jig to work through wood, timber, pull it along the bottom, or a swim jig,
Right.
basically. But anyway,
Right.
go ahead,
And
continue.
like with the Rockstar, I actually use 3 tabs of skirt material. So there's basically 64 strands of skirt material in there.
Do you
So it's a
really have
fuller
3
skirt.
tabs in there? Hold on, I got to make you big because that
Okay.
doesn't look like there's that.
Okay. Yeah,
It's pretty balanced then, dude.
there's 3 different colors in there.
Okay.
Okay. And then it's like, let me show you. This is what we call a capital craw.
Okay.
Okay. And
Oh, look
that's
at that one.
basically, it's a light green pumpkin, a dark green pumpkin,
And a little orange, like
a
brown and orange.
root beer green flake, and then
Okay.
the orange for the flash. And
You you little sneaky devil throwing that root beer in there with the green flake. That
color
actually,
is ridiculous. It gets bit everywhere. So I think any jig maker out there right now should be, if you're at home and you got some of these materials, try that recipe, and I guarantee it gets bit everywhere. It's
the
just
one thing that I haven't thrown in that mix, I've used light, dark, and then with sometimes I'll throw like that the pumpkin seed with the orange fire tip tails in there just a little bit.
right.
I like a lot of the old school skirt tabs, right? A lot of these new ones are too jazzy for me. It's almost like they're making the designs for you. And I kind of like your style of jig. And as a matter of fact, Rob, that's what I call, when you hear me talk about flow, color flow, this is the type of stuff I'm talking about. These type of colors are why I came up with the term flow.
I'm kind of more subtle shades instead of like drastic colors. Like I'll do a light pump. Like this is one of our favorite colors too, and it's a play on this one. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
But it's basically just the light green pumpkin, the darker green pumpkin, and then like that you said, that pumpkin seed orange.
Yeah, just a
With a
little.
flash, and that's it. And that's my hybrid jig. That's the one that I custom designed.
I think in that realm of colors, it's probably one of the best crawfish imitators out there.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
my own opinion.
and even perch and bluegill, and
Perch.
I
As
mean
soon as you throw
everything.
that orange in there, see now, if anyone goes back and looks at so those type of color profiles also, and it's not the exact colors, but the other thing that I like to do to start moving into the bluegill world is throwing. There's it's like a light smoke color. It almost looks clear, but it's got black and blue flake in it. It's a phenomenal skirt. I forgot what it's called. It's different places call it different things, but it's basically a very light smoke, almost clear, with blue and black flake, which makes it look a little more smoky like.
Right.
But it's just those are the cool things. And I'll tell you what, you have a bluegill too, don't you?
Yeah, it's right
Yeah,
here.
this is here. I want to see this.
And this is this is hard to describe. It's got barbed wire, which is the material that's got that black line through it. And
hold up a little higher, Rob.
It's
There
green pumpkin. Well, it's actually like a watermelon, but it's got blue flake in it, and then I've got that light green pumpkin in there.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of that sexy blue, they call it. It's like a light powder blue.
Yeah,
which that's the real killer. That's the deal on that one. And then an orange. So that's a great color. Clearwater, another one that kind of gets bit everywhere, but it's nice with that little bit of blue in there. I don't know if it's showing up.
I really like the blue that you used in there. Yeah, no, it's showing up. So like when it comes to bluegill jigs, right? To be honest with you, I would bet I always like the multicolored where it's a mix of light or dark green pumpkin, a watermelon with some brown, whatever. That's probably my all-time favorite. But I really like seeing people's bluegill representations because I've seen everything from I'm going to call it this color. John DeMay, if you're out there listening, I don't know if this is the exact color, but John DeMay, I looked at his bluegill and it looked like there was almost like a little bit of cantaloupe in there. The skirt material.
Because
and it's just so interesting watching these. And then sometimes people throw some real cool looking purple highlighted ones in there. It's just, there's so many cool representations of bluegills out there. In terms of the jig world, that's the profile or color profile that I am most excited to see people make.
Yeah,
right?
I see I don't know if it's pumpkin seeds or sunfish or whatever, but they have that cantaloupe kind of peach color on their throat. And that's probably what John's going for. It all depends. And I live like 5 minutes from Lake Springfield, and the bluegills that are there, that are in the rocks, and those things are dark, they're black, they're green, and they got that light blue on them. So I've made up some jigs where it was dark green pumpkin barbed wire, black blue flake, and then that sexy powder blue on there, and that just looks just like those bluegills.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, so Matt, South Jersey fisherman, says, does Rob like to use any singular bright colors like a solid scuppernong or pinkish shrimp jig? That's a great question, dude.
I'll tell you one color, and I don't think I have it with me. I meant to grab it because I was going to tell you the story behind it. When we were living up north at the Chain of Lakes, the water, I fished a lot of shallow stuff there. And I was looking for a good flipping jig. There's different color. And I tied a jig that was basically black on the bottom.
Okay. I love it. This already.
And then it had red, orange, and chartreuse on the top.
Really?
Okay. And I mean, we called it shock and awe because the whole idea was if it's coming down at you, it's giving you a nice silhouette, the dark, Yeah. Then when you hit the bottom, if the fish is still looking at it, he's freaking out looking at the color. And we caught a lot of fish on that color.
How you describe that is very, very interesting because that conceptually makes sense, right? And Wow. Yeah.
I mean, that was one thing that we caught a lot of fish on that thing. And that's
Interesting.
exactly what I thought. I mean, okay, it's silhouetting, but once it hits the bottom, it's shocking. So either they're gonna hit it or they're gonna leave it alone. But it worked out well. So that was like one of my more, say, shocking color, that I would use. I'm not sure the pinkish shrimp jig. I don't know what he's
Yeah.
about that. But.
So you want to know why I got excited about that? So Matt, when you asked that question, like pinkish shrimp jig, what's funny is I've never made a skirt with any type of pink in it. Like I could see a pink and white, maybe swim jig, right? But the funny thing is, if you put me in the salt, I would be all about any type of those shrimp tones and those tans or pinks. I would be all about that on a jig. And even to be honest with you, I even tied up a few. They're old. I haven't made them. These are some of the first hair jigs I made, like pink and white hair jigs. But I don't mess around with those colors when I see skirted jigs. As a matter of fact, I get turned off a little bit when I see skirted jigs that have those flamboyant colors. You know what I mean? I don't know why. But if you show me a hair jig that has some unique colors in it, I'm all excited.
Yeah.
I don't know why. That's just me. Interesting. Very interesting. So what do you so your name for the types of jigs you have are what, Rob?
Okay, I've got the hybrid pitching jig, and this is the one that I designed. Basically, it's a bullet head style, but we put a flat bottom on it. Okay, I don't know if you can see.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we recessed the eye as much as we could too.
Okay.
So it's much like a bullhead. But the thing I liked about it was I used to use a Picasso jig, and they had that Mustad megabyte hook in it. Okay, so that's why they kind of got hard to find in that. So that's why I started pouring these with the Mustad megabyte in it.
There are people that love that hook.
You either love it or you hate it. I love it, and I don't know why anybody would hate it because the thing locks them up, catches them like crazy. It's a medium to heavy gauge wire hook. I wouldn't use braid with it, but for 90% of all fishing, this is a great jig. And I always
What size is that megabyte you're putting in there, Rob?
4/0 in the 3/8 and 5.5.
5/0. Good gosh.
Yeah. So, and it's not, I mean, this is a half. I mean, I don't know. You can't,
yeah, I mean,
it's not overly huge,
No.
And it's got a medium weed guard on it. But the thing about this hook is much like the Rockstar, it's kind of got that area that locks them up.
Yeah.
It doesn't allow a lot of, movement. And this is a jig that I started making pretty much from the beginning. And then people said, well, we need a heavier hook. We want a bigger hook.
Right.
So I'm like, okay.
And you're saying going up from the 4/0, they want them bigger than that.
Yeah. And they wanted a heavier gauge. So I took a traditional Arky, put a good collar on it to keep the skirt up, a little bit of a keeper, and then that's a Mustad. And I put a 5/0 in the 3/8 and a 6 in the 5.
I'm sorry. You didn't tell me that the other day when we were talking. I'm sorry. Hold on a second. I'm going to watch this. You're going to laugh. Did you say 6/0?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Let's get you back. We got to bring you back.
There it is.
Holy smokes. What size? That's a 6.5?
Yeah.
And
that's a 6.5. Yeah.
Holy cow, man.
Yeah.
Look at that thing.
I mean, the 3/8 that I have in this, I use a lot for dock skipping and stuff. And, but guys just wanted a bigger hook in that. Now, some guys will say that's too big of a hook, but I'll tell you one thing, and I'm sure a lot of guys in the chat and everybody know, you can't make everybody happy. So you just got to make a product that you like, because I fish all this stuff. So, that's how I gauge it, basically.
Here's what I'm going to say about the hook size stuff, right? hook sizes a lot of times to me is about horse and fish, and I whatever, just a generic comment by me. But if somebody hears you that thing's got a 6-aught in it, there's going to be people that get excited about that, because keep in mind, people that are throwing a 6-aught hook are fishing at and stuff that I'm afraid to look at.
Yeah.
You know, and they're trying to pull stuff out. And the funny thing is, I could turn around and throw a size 1 or a 1-aught with a piece of plastic on it on a swim jig, a Kitech.
Mm-hmm.
How is that? You see what I'm saying? So the point is, if somebody's going to go up to a 5-aught, why the heck not go to a 6-aught? The size fish, they're not going to have a problem. I don't buy that a bass is going to have a problem getting that bait in their mouth.
No, not at all. I mean, I catch little 12 inchers on it, you know.
I bet you people, once they hear that thing has a 6-aught in there, I bet you'll have more people coming to you just because of that.
And it all depends on the fisherman itself. I never used to be like a crazy hook set guy. Good friend of mine, Ben Venturini, he sets the hook like crazy. Okay. And he's not a big fan of the hybrid, just because he'll flex that hook on one of his hook sets. Okay.
See, that's a good point.
But I've been the opposite. I mean, I can fish the hybrid behind him and catch fish and not lose anything, just a little bit lighter hook set that I have, you know, and maybe just play the fish a little bit more. You know, some guys are setting the hook and just cranking that fish in right away. That's fine if that's how you do it, but there's all kinds of ways to, you know,
it's funny. We touched on this on the last show a little bit too, Rob. I think one of the crazy parts of all this is that all your gear becomes really relative too, right? Mm-hmm. And so what type of power rod you're using, you know, and then in addition, how heavy the line is that people are using, right?
Right.
And I mean, there's guys, you know, I don't know. People are going to think I'm a hack some days, but whatever. When I hear people using like 80-pound braid and all this other stuff, I just kind of shake my head. I'm like, Jesus, 80 pound. I said, I think I could pull a tree over with 80 pound.
Right.
You know? I mean, I'm exaggerating, right?
I mean, think of what you can do with just 20-pound fluorocarbon.
I know.
And, I mean, it's amazing what you can pull up with that.
Well, you know, the other thing is, Rob, I'm starting to realize, yeah, look at Brian Schmidt saying you could spin tires without dropping the clutch. Right. You know, I mean, it's funny because as Rob, my experience. Okay, so you said you're 50. What 50? You're in your 50s.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so I'm like about literally less than 6 months away from 50. Right.
Good luck.
right when we hit the 1-year anniversary of Jig Squad in January, I'm going to be turning 50. So, but what I laugh is I go, I'm becoming the old cat around town. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like I'm not one of these young guys. I had a conversation with a friend of mine today who works in the industry, and along the way, it was kind of said, and we weren't talking about my age, but we did wind up talking about his, and he made mention that he's in his 20s, and I almost fell over. I thought, holy cow. Mm-hmm. I said, half the stuff people are using now was invented after I got used to what I was fishing for years, you know? And that's the cool thing. Like, but I will say this, I'm starting to understand that I am much more old school in terms of some of my practices fishing than I fully would want to admit and accept. But it's okay. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, it's more than okay. I think a lot of people you start out basic, and then you have to have everything, and you get crazy with colors and line and lures and baits and rods, and then you mature a little bit, and you kind of come around to saying, okay, I don't need all this stuff. You know, I don't need 1,000 color or 100 jig colors in my box. Right. Some people get off on it, but you don't need it. And one of the things, walk down a boat dock at a big tournament and look on the decks of the boats. You're going to see a lot of green pumpkin, black and blue. You know, it doesn't get too crazy, you know.
You know, a lot of people, like, tackle excites me just like anyone else. Yeah. And my joy in the fishing scene now is about making fun jigs and some different things
Mm-hmm.
and playing around. But I mean, like, as an example, when I just got done, I made over the last couple months, I made like I kind of got a late start. I did some stuff during the summer, but I was more tying things. But when I was just making regular jigs and stuff like that for like swim jigs and stuff like that, Neds, all that type of stuff. When I was making things in like March, April, in May, what I found myself making were some simple colors: green, black heads, white heads,
Mm-hmm.
purple, and then I made some chartreuse just as like a standout,
Right.
and some green pumpkin. But and to me, it was kind of like I almost have too many colors right there already, and so I did that because it keeps me invested in the industry a little bit and what I'm doing. And I love making cool stuff. Like I make a lot of fun stuff and then I give it to people.
Right.
I'd rather see other people be happy. But if you put a jig, if you said, Mike, what jig am I putting in my hand? You said you have to go make skirted jigs, Mike, for yourself, and you have to go fish in a tournament. What would I have? A bluegill variety, I would have one like that one you showed with the green pumpkin. It would be green pumpkin, watermelon, and possibly like a pumpkin seed combo by itself. And I'd have another one with a little bit of the orange in there.
Mm-hmm.
I would have one with the orange, one without the orange. And I would keep it pretty simple. I don't throw a lot of black and blue jigs. I never have. But I do like those natural colors where you're talking different colors of the green pumpkins or pumpkins. And I love all that stuff. That's my jam. And then fancy on the side is I like throwing plastics with like purple in it and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, we've got the last couple of years we've got into using purple quite a bit more for some reason. It seems like every year you try something new and you start whacking fish on it. But the last couple of years, the purple has been kind of something that we've been leaning towards on that. And like this is one of my versions of black and blue. It's called Blues Clues. And if anybody had kids like 15, 20 years ago, there was a show called Blues Clues.
I remember this.
The dog on the show was that blue. Okay. So I call it
blue.
I call it Blues Clues. And it's basically black, blue flake, and then the blue barbed wire.
See, the reason I like that a lot. Okay, let's talk black and blue because we're talking black and blue. So the reason if I'm going to have black and blue, it's going to have extra blue in it, just like you just showed right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the other variety, right? That is it's more black, and then like it'll have like a blue flake in it as opposed to barring like that.
Right.
But I like it with more blue. Even look at like I personally think like a lot of the guys you hear people talking about green pumpkin with blue flake now, and actually a new hot color seems to be in the plastic world over the last several years is all the like blue highlight, right? But blue gets bit, right? Yeah. It really does. And you got to figure most of the blue that we use when it comes to our lures comes to our plastics. It's usually on bottom baits, but man, if you use blue and like a smoke or like a silver or a white, now you're talking like blueback herring and all these different types of bait fish. There's such a variety. I honestly think that once you get into swim jigs, you have more opportunity to lighten things up and go for bait fish profiles.
I totally agree. Yeah, then you bring more of the bait fish into it. That's
how about Rob? How about a crankbait? This is the one thing that I've never been able to. I always tell myself that I want a jig like this, and I never do it. And I actually made a couple of swim jigs up that I'm specifically going to put some citrus shad or call it whatever you will, citrus shad or sexy shad type colors. I love that color so much. And then the other one that I'm hot to trot on that I want to do more is, and you have it in your spinnerbait. Do you remember what I told you was the spinnerbait that I really liked that you made?
Yep. The red blade one.
The red bladed one. Right.
Yep.
I want to incorporate that into a jig somehow. And then the other one is, and for that one, it's like chartreuse and white. And then the other one is the Table Rock Shad.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's just.
I don't know. I don't know if that's going to show.
Oh yeah. Hold on. Let me switch you over to the.
That's basically kind of like a Zoom blue and a a blue interference, they call it, and then
Yeah.
chartreuse on the bottom.
You actually, Rob, you guys on Angler Assets here. I'll show you. I'll put it up here so you guys see it too. If you go to Angler Assets on Instagram, he's actually got a picture of that spinnerbait on there where you see the blue highlights a little bit more. I call it purple, but I mean, it just, it's phenomenal. It's hard. I think it's just harder showing up on the camera, Ref. But it's a beautiful looking.
Here's the skirt. I don't know if that's gonna. I can't show it that well. Doesn't do it justice.
You got to go look at the picture, man. It looks really good.
It's a good color.
It's a beautiful looking color, and I could see that on swim jigs.
Yeah, you know? Definitely.
Here's another one. Gramps just said it. Oh, hold on. Let's go Daniel T. We got a couple up. I don't want to miss anyone. So Jay says, what are your thoughts with skirts matte colors versus the glossy with glitter? That's a good question too. We haven't had that one yet.
There's a lot of companies now that are starting to do like matte colored heads and that. I kind of like it, but I don't know if it makes that much of a difference with that. But you know, all the green pumpkins I use are pretty much, I guess, matte because it's just a dull black flake in it, you know.
Right.
But
yeah, I mean, it is a good question. It's funny because a lot of the plastics, if you would have asked me, Jay, if you would have asked me that same question like 2 years ago and said, like, let's just talk about like plastics, I would be like, nah, it just doesn't look as finished. And basically what I started to learn, and there was one particular bait that changed my mind on this, and it was the Slick Shiner. The Slick Shiner, it's basically a 3 3/4 inch thin bodied swim jig plastic bait that out of a mold from Do It Molds. And I had somebody sent to me, and I used them in salt water, and they come out of the molds, the sand cast mold, and they don't have the sheen on it because it's not CNC, it's sand cast mold. Oh. And I looked at these baits, I go, that looks 10 times more natural right now to me than the shiny ones does. Yeah. But you know, like if I look at a muscleback craw from like X Zone, which I'm fond of, right. You know, like I look at those and I think they're beautiful baits, and Jim Van Ryn has done a wonderful job with X Zone. But at the end of the day, I kind of like, I'm starting to move towards the matte colors. I like them a little bit more.
There's some guys, I know Randy Blaukett, he always talks about he roughs up his plastics.
Yep.
Like his Cincos and everything. He brings that salt out and he'll show you the bait, you know, out of the package, and then this one, and it looks totally different. It's got like a matte look to it, you know. It's almost like guys that are driving around with crankbaits on their front dash, you know,
right?
So they bleach out a little bit, you know. It's more of a matte color. You know?
Yeah, and it's funny because but conceptually, so I'll play devil's advocate. Like if you go the opposite end and you say, well, if you're trying to imitate like a bait fish profile, well, I mean, most of the bait fish, I don't know how many baits don't have scales, right? There are some bait fish that don't have scales, but the majority of them do.
Right.
And there's going to be like a pearlescent type of sheen that comes off them, which lends itself back to like the glossy style baits. So I don't know. Interesting. 6 of one, half dozen of the other sometimes, right?
You know, everything gets bit sooner or later.
All right. Yeah, right. So, okay. So Dan T says, have you ever made or tried a swim jig in a black back shad pattern? Black on top, silver side with some flash and white bottom. I've not seen that before, but I would like to have that color to try.
Yeah,
interesting.
I don't see why that wouldn't work. You know, it's basically like a bait fish, you know, with the colors. But we've been messing around with even football jigs with black and silver in them, just because the lake I live on, Springfield, there's a lot of shad in the lake. It's crazy. You can walk across them sometimes. There's so many. So we've been playing around with black and silvers and stuff like that and having some success. And that's on a bottom bouncing jig, you know, not swimming it. So
interesting. Daniel, I'll tell you this. And probably somebody will make a case for another color, but the guys that fish the big flare hawk jigs, if you don't know what those are, look them up. Flare hawk jigs for snook underneath the bridges. down in like Florida and other places, there's a lot of core colors that people talk about, but there's a group of guys that swear by black and white flare hawk jigs contrasted, and they're swimming them and they're bringing them in through the shadows off the bridges at night and just getting pounded by 40+ inch snook. And they talk about the they are only going for not being color itself, but more of a highlight in the water and how it silhouettes. And I mean, there's nothing more of a contrast than white and black, right? So what a concept. I don't see why it wouldn't work. I mean, I think it would be good. Gramps says chartreuse with a black back. So yeah, similar concept. I think that would be.
And I know some guys and maybe some of the guys in the chat or whatever have painted like their heads of their jigs like chartreuse and then had a black skirt. Stuff like that. I think that's kind of neat to have a contrasting head color, whether it be, blue or chartreuse or whatever. But I know some guys have done that.
Yeah, Anthony's saying, darker colors on top and then lighter colors on the bottom. And that seems to be like the standard way it goes, just because that's predominantly any type of barring or scaling.
Nature is.
Yeah, that's how you're going to see it. To be honest with you, I'll never say who, and I'm not going to say that I haven't made things a little different sometimes, but when I see a jig like that, it looks when I see a jig that is the opposite, it just looks upside down to me.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
There was years ago, probably 20+ years ago, there were some crankbaits where they were painted upside down.
Yes.
For a different look.
Yes.
I'm sure they got bit, but
and you got to figure, you ever see a bait fish that's wounded and swimming half sideways and cockeyed? Maybe it looks like that. I don't know.
Yeah, my jig, the jigs aren't always falling, perfect for these fish, and they're not gonna, if it glances off of a brush pile or something like that, who knows what's top or bottom on it? They're gonna eat it.
Yeah, so Tom's saying, have you ever seen something that was basically a black and blue jig, but just the blue was a few strands up front? I have seen that, Tom, and I've seen it a couple different ways. Like I've seen it where they purposely cut it, where there's some skirt material out there that is blue tipped. So there's it's like a black and blue, and then the tip is blue. Maybe about on a tab that's, what is it? It's about 4 or 5 inches. The tip is about 1.5 inches of blue. I've seen people, if you saw Tom in towards the beginning when Rob held up they call it spider cut head, where it's shorter material.
There's a green pumpkin with the sexy blue tip.
Yes. So that would be, Rob, like what I'm telling Tom is that blue tip there would be a black and blue jig, but you would have that on the front above where it was tied in up by the head. So I've seen that before.
Yeah, they do it reverse. I don't think I have. Yeah, I don't have any of that.
So Rob, here's a great comment. So Matt, South Jersey Fisherman, says, he thinks it'd be cool to see like some old school colored jigs, like a redhead. That's a classic saltwater color, which they still use, or an old school bullfrog color. Oh my gosh, I don't know if he's in chat. Is it Westfall Outdoors, Jake Westfall, or Omaha Fisherman? One of those two guys on Instagram, Jake Westfall or Omaha Fisherman. They made a bluegill jig that was awesome. You just got to go look them up and scroll through their stuff. You'll know when you see it. But they a couple months back, they had made a bullfrog jig that I just thought was killer. I don't know what skirts they used, but it just looked really cool.
I'll have to look that up.
What's lime green? You have to hear Eric on those bright net heads. Yeah, so a lot of guys, I will tell you this. So bright net heads, it doesn't have to be a net head. It actually could be somebody else, actually Travis turned me on to this, is using just ball heads with a screw lock on like the smaller like Kytex and stuff like that, chartreuse heads. Phenomenal.
I think actually the first who is it, Ned Katie or whoever?
Ned Katie, yeah.
Yeah. I think his original idea with the net heads was he had a red head on it.
Did he really?
Yeah, I'm almost positive.
Tom, I got you, buddy. That made me think of that though when you brought it up. Interesting. But
Oh
I
yeah,
do know
they've
what you're
got weed.
talking about.
Yeah, they've got weed guards that have like chartreuse mixed in it now, blue and red, and yeah, I haven't used any of that though. No reason it wouldn't work though. That's for sure.
Yeah, Jim's saying sometimes colors for the fishermen, right? And
Yeah,
for show.
and yeah, and to sell. you know.
Yeah.
But it
What's
also
the
has
last part he said? He goes, but I give them a leech or tadpole treat and only throw only back 30 years. Yeah. I got you, buddy. Bass, welcome, buddy.
yeah.
Yeah, Tom, I get what you're saying, but I kind of misunderstood that. That's but it made me think of that when you said that. It made me think of that styled skirt tabs that you can get. So I mean, so basically all those colors do some pretty cool stuff. But I'll tell you what, Rob, the thing that I like the most about that pitch and jig you showed is that one that it's got a big head on it, but the bottom is flattened out.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And that's kind of why I call it a hybrid. I mean, you can use it in all kinds of situations. It's a great swim jig. Okay. It comes through the grass really well. You can throw this thing in the middle of the weed bed. And if you're using fluorocarbon, you can snap it and that head will clean itself right off. It's amazing. I think about like when I was 18, young, it's like I never fished a jig in grass. It was just like, oh no, you got to use a Texas rig worm, but this thing comes right through it.
Yeah.
And then you can use it on the bottom and, and it actually, I mean, it's depending on the trailer you're using, but it'll sit up like that, and then you've got the craw coming off of there. So it's kind of like, it's a good all-purpose jig. And I've got kids in the neighborhood and in the area that fish a lot of ponds and that. And it's a great pond jig all around.
Yeah, I could see that. So
it's a little rougher. It's a little rougher in the rocks, but if you learn how to fish it, and depending on the trailer, I tell people to use like a wider trailer, and you can almost float that thing, on top of the rocks instead of burying it into the rocks.
Yeah, I got you.
So size of trailer is a big deal. People don't realize that, but
and then I saw you throwing up a couple of those Arky styled or Sparky heads.
Arkies.
That's what you're using.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a great style. And there's one other you have. What's the other one? There's three, right?
Yeah. It's the Arky head. That's the one with the big round mustad in it.
Yep.
And the 3/8 I use a lot for skipping. It's a great skipping jig. Now the hybrid will skip too, but this is a little bit nicer because it's for the heavier cover. If you're pulling it out around docks and stuff,
Yeah,
you don't have to worry about it. But it's another good all around jig. I don't get too crazy with the designs. These three designs you can pretty much do quite a bit with.
Yeah.
So
Rob,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
We've even pitched like the 1/2 ounce rock stars around docks and stuff. It's just a good all around jig.
Rob, let me ask you a question. So if somebody's not around Shields and stuff like that, do you do any sales anywhere else? Or
I do a little bit, but just personally, but it's so hard to keep up with that. I'm in the process of having a website made, and that's been an ordeal in the past. And now I finally got a guy that I'm really excited about using, and I'll have some stuff on, coming into probably during the winter. I think the website will be up, but the whole goal is to kind of keep it growing, not get too crazy big at, all at once. And, hopefully, Shields does online stuff too. So, that's something that we're looking at down the road too. So
nice. Cause I think the funny thing is about Angler Assets is I kind of I feel that, well, one, when those opportunities come for you, people are going to eat them up, And I mean, there's a lot of people in the industry that are very fond of Angler Assets, Kevin Baxter, he's a big fan of your stuff. Have you guys ever watched any of the Kevin Baxter stuff? He's a great dude. Honest as you can come.
Right.
And You know what I
Loves his
mean?
purple. Loves
He
his
loves
purple.
he likes that table rock. Did
Yeah.
you call that table rock Shad, or
Yeah.
I just call it a
Yeah. It's
table rock?
Table Rock Shad.
Okay.
Yeah.
He loves his Jinx. You
Yeah.
know, he's a great guy. Panger, all these, you know, a lot of people know who Angler Assets is, and so I'm kind of
And then there's
excited.
a lot of guys that don't talk about it.
They don't. I know, and that's the crazy part. And so I see. Look at everyone says the bait man rules. Jane Juice. It's so true, man. And I'm so excited for the future for you too, because it's kind of like, you know, the sky's the limit. You don't. Yeah. It just you have. There's a lot of opportunity to come for you, and
Well, that's
I mean,
like when I first got on Tackle Warehouse. Okay, so they place an order, and then I'm sitting there nervous, going, "Well, are they going to sell? You know, how
right.
fast are they going to sell? When are they going to reorder? You know?" And then they sold, and then they order more, and then they order more, and they order more, and it keeps on going. And I'm thinking, well, these things are selling, and I'm just a small guy with like really no advertising, you know,
Right.
just some word of mouth. And then you know, I'd start hearing stories like, oh yeah, you've got kind of a following in Texas, you know, and guys are using them but they're not talking about them. And you
I
know,
remember you.
and I
talking
get
about
guys like that even around here. It's just like, oh, I gotta, you know, if I put like a guy on a local, you know, pro staff or team or whatever, I'm like, you got to post pictures and you got to show
you
what you
gotta
got
show
going on,
stuff.
you know.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, okay, you know, whatever. I'm like, don't worry, I'll make it worthwhile to, you know. But
Yeah, I just think it's great. And you know, there's so many different companies out there, right? And um you know, I've said this before, and like it'll never be my goal with Jig Squad that we dog any company specifically, right? I shouldn't say never, but I'm close to saying never. But you know, um, but it is the story of what people create and how they go about, you know, arriving to where they are in life or as
yeah, and
part of their business is amazing. And I appreciate that about your story.
like the other day when I was talking to you, I said, and I know you got, you know, you're in with Do It molds. That's
Mhm.
how it started with me. You
Yeah.
know, I bought one of their Archie head molds and I was making jigs. And then I actually made a spinner bait out of that Archie mold.
Yes.
I took a triangle. Well, I just took a file and
File. No Dremels back then.
not a Dremel. Yeah, I didn't even have it. So I etched out a line for the wire
Wire,
for the
yeah.
spinner bait and poured spinner baits on that head. And we actually used a little bit lighter. We were actually using worm hooks for the spinnerbait molds, and it was more of an O'Shaughnessy style, a little bit lighter wire, and that we use that to make our short arm spinnerbaits and that. But it all starts out with a Do It mold, you know,
Yeah. I
and
mean,
then you can use what Do It sells, or you can, you know, change a little bit.
branch out and do
I've
different
seen
things.
guys online and that are, like you said, with the Dremel tools, and they're changing stuff, and you
Right.
know, it's the sky's the limit with a lot of this stuff. That's
I mean,
what's so cool.
I've modified my molds to accept different hooks so many times, and the thing is, you know, I tell people all the time, I'm like, there are times where people move on to different levels of manufacturing, right?
Right.
And but I'll tell you what, I don't think there's one company out there that makes jigs that didn't start off using Do It molds. And I'll give you an example. That doesn't take away from you, me, or anyone else in chat that is still the hobbyist end, right?
Right.
And making things, because there's not a mold out there that I can't adjust and make work the way I want it to, you know? And
Exactly.
that's the great thing about it. But it is a time thing, right? And so and pouring jigs is, you know, I have a good buddy down in Florida, and he makes a lot of jigs for the commercial fishing industry, saltwater.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, I go, listen, I said, are you really going to pour? He's like, I got somebody that wants 3,000 of these things. I go, you're really going to pour 3,000? And you got to understand, saltwater stuff. So you're talking 2 ounce, 3 ounce.
Right.
You know what I mean? I go, are you really going to pour all this? He says, that's how I've kept my secrets, man. I go, you're out of your mind.
Yeah.
But that's how people do some things. Here's a good question. Brian Schmidt. So Brian's got, now Rob, I don't know if you knew. So Brian's got some of his stuff over at Tackle Warehouse, right? He's got some jigs in there, and I don't know, maybe a spinnerbait too. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I've got I think he's referring to the new warehouse.
Oh, yeah, that's probably right. Because
Yeah.
it's California and now Georgia.
Right.
Okay.
And I've shipped to them. I don't see the difference as far as my stuff is still selling, and I've been out of stock on some of the stuff just because of the supply chain woes. So I haven't specifically seen any difference. It's not like I'm selling more because the Georgia. I hope that maybe they're shipping better. I know they were having some issues with time on shipping and that, but that's basically it with that.
You think that's just because of volume for Tackle Warehouse out in California?
Yeah, I think they wanted to be able to, ship to the eastern part of the states, quicker.
Yeah,
but I thought they shipped pretty quick from California. So I don't know, but I mean, they've got so many products under their roof. So
we ask it all here, my friend. So Chris McCluskey, Gators Adventures, another Illinois guy. He goes, how many guys use your baits that are sponsored by other companies? And I guarantee there's some.
Yeah, but that's how the business is.
That's how the business is.
And I mean, and the knockoffs this business is really bad with that. So I've seen, it's been probably about 10 years or so that I've been doing like this one with the chartreuse on it. Okay. I mean, I was using it just for me, just a few guys. And then all of a sudden you start seeing them. And I'm not saying I was the first one to do it, but I was probably the first one in Tackle Warehouse that did it, that, got it. And then you start seeing, other guys do it. And, it's frustrating, but it's like, hey, it is what it is.
A lot of guys are talking like, what's the value of custom molds? I mean, Ballin, here's what I'll say on custom molds, or getting custom molds done. I mean, it all comes down to something different. So not to get into I don't want to get into the whole, making custom molds discussion that deep. But what I'll say is, I definitely think that the reason people get custom molds made is because they want to make something different. And Rob and I actually, we talked about this the other day. It's that whole concept. You just want something different. So many of the things that are out there are just an imitation of something else already, right?
Right.
I mean, we all know that.
And I absolutely refuse to just make a bait because somebody else is making it.
Yes.
I'd like to say, my spinnerbait's got colored blades. That makes them different. My Arky style flipping jig is got a bigger hook in it. So it's, it's different in some way. And I'll never sit there and make just like another exact duplicate of another bait. It drives me crazy.
And there's a lot of that in the industry.
Oh, it's tons of that. It's just like my biggest complaint is like with the chatterbait. Okay.
Right.
And that was basically, a small guy that came up with a great idea, and then he gets knocked off, and then he puts out the cease and desists, and guys go around it by putting a split ring on it. I can't stand that. I'm going to throw a jackhammer. I mean, I don't care. I'm going to throw a jackhammer. I'm not going to make a chatterbait with a split ring on it.
All right, let's have this discussion then. All right, so here's my question for you. I agree with you in certain parts of this, but my question is this. How do you feel if you wanted to make your own chatterbaits and you weren't selling them, right? You wanted to make your own. Do you object to making your own?
I You know what? Honestly, I don't throw a chatterbait that much. I
Okay.
have in the last couple of years, but I used to be able to get the heads and make them like chatterbaits. Okay,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
right,
Do you
the
remember
hook
they used
eye.
to sell them like that?
Yeah, the hook eye right to the blade. Okay,
Yes.
and then last year I made several with the split ring. I don't like the split ring as much, but I think the hobbyist, I think it's fine. But
Yeah, that's kind of my life a little bit.
I don't like seeing 12 different types of chatterbaits with split rings on them. I
I
don't
get
like
what you're saying, and
you
you know,
know.
there's nothing wrong with saying that. And there's people that sell chatterbaits as part of the thing. So be it, But for myself, one, I don't throw a chatterbait a lot. I do make some chatterbaits, but the deal is, once I have I don't need to have 100 chatterbaits, right? Like I have
Right.
enough chatterbaits to suffice my needs. And no joke, Rob, back in the day, years ago, they used to sell, funny enough, I think lure parts online. They or whether it be lure parts or Barlow's, back in the
Right.
day, they used to sell the chatterbait head with the opened eye.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you could buy the exact blades that you cannot buy the exact blades anymore. You can't even buy the exact blades anymore. But the cease and desist by them, yeah, right. I have a bag of 150 of them
Yeah.
downstairs.
Yeah.
But the thing is, for me, like I said, at the end of the day, I've made, I don't know, 50 chatterbaits in my career. And I've used them, and I've given some to my friends, and that's over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I don't need I don't need a ton of them. I mean, they're
Well,
basically made with spinnerbait hooks, and you can make them differently now. But my mentor even taught me how to make eyelets that are sturdier than any of the other eyelets that anyone uses for chatterbaits nowadays. And
mhm.
I've never given that secret up, because it was my mentor's, and he actually owns a store and sells chatterbaits. And
Mhm.
he did this back in the day, but I've never shared that technique with anyone, and I
Yeah.
won't, because I owe that to him. Like
Right.
I can't. He's using something different for an eyelet that makes it more robust and sturdy than anyone
Yeah.
else, and he asked me not to share, and the guy's 80 some years old, and I told him I won't tell anyone.
Yeah. Like you said, with lure parts, they sold a ton of those heads
It
with the
was
open eye.
pre-made. Like, all you had to do was paint. Actually, I even think you could buy them painted, and the eyelet was opened up. All you
Right.
had to
And
do
just
was,
crimp it. Yeah.
oh my
Yeah. And then
God.
I think they got a cease and desist. And so now they have, everything has to be sold separately. I've seen some companies that they'll sell the head and then they'll sell the blade. And then you have to put it together,
Yeah.
however you want. But okay, Balling 21 says, so you're
You
saying your
see it?
spinnerbait isn't a knockoff just because of the painted blade? There's so many different types of spinnerbaits. I'm just saying it's a little bit, it's just different, I mean, spinnerbaits. I know what he's saying
Yeah.
about that, but
So I don't know much about this, Ballin, so I can't answer with any degree of intelligence, right? What I can tell you is this: I have a friend in the industry right now, that they're working on a spinnerbait, and one of the experiences along the way is there is a tremendous amount of back and forth regarding of where the R bend is on the spinnerbait, because it'll cause it to break.
mhm,
So one, all spinnerbaits are not created equal, right? So like the gauge of wire is a big deal. The angling of the R bend, or actually some of the old school ways of the twist ties, right? It
right.
just depends.
Well, some people prefer the twist ties too. It's they believe it's stronger in that and
Yeah.
doesn't flex as much. But
But there are variances, and like a style theme. I mean, the point, Ball, and your point is well made, but at the same time, I just think there's degree of variances
I think
in
it's
the
concept.
realm of
I
spinnerbaits.
think what I'm talking about more is the concept. That chatterbait concept was, totally new,
Right.
totally one of a kind. And
What's
spinnerbaits,
funny is, if you went back, Rob, if anyone went back and ever put patents on some very specific things and wrote the patents right on a spinnerbait, there would only be one spinnerbait nowadays.
Yeah, but see,
it's just the fact that it never happened.
And for people to spend the money to patent a fishing lure, it's like you can get around it so easily. You know, just like I said with the split ring.
Yeah.
I was going to show you this, like, because hold on one second. There's a spinnerbait. I don't know where it is now.
Jim, that's crazy. I just read that comment. Jim's saying, you know, back in the day when you couldn't find the chatterbaits, hundreds, and sold.
Oh yeah, people were selling them like crazy. That's where this blade came from. I bought a whole bunch of these, but then this blade, some guy was punching these out, but it's too rough. It was too much of that.
Yeah, it is.
You know,
I actually, you know, I'll tell you what. Funny enough, I've always said that I'll never lie on this show, and I won't. I bought one. I still have a large supply of that size, that style blade. But you know, truth be told, I actually ordered some from overseas. I did, and I don't know why I did, because I probably had minimum of 50 some left of the old ones, like that style. And I ordered more because I thought, well, I'll never need them again. The funny thing is, I haven't had to make a chatterbait in years.
Right.
I just haven't had the need. I don't lose them. I don't fish them enough. And I mean, I don't know if I've got 30 chatterbaits in a box downstairs. I don't have a need for them.
I think my main thing with the chatterbait is just the concept behind it. It was really cool, one of a kind.
Yeah, I agree.
A lot of guys jumped on the train and profited off of his initial deal. So I mean, it's a topic that can go on.
I know. Ballin's got it right. He just said, he goes, the point is that as a whole, the industry as a whole is a knockoff, right?
Right.
It is true. You know, and it's crazy because it's funny because I could see myself explaining both sides of the fence when it comes to some of this stuff. It's kind of like we're basically fishermen talking about the polo shirt. You know,
right.
There's how many different versions?
Yeah.
I mean, there's an original polo shirt, and then there's everything else, right?
Exactly.
And so that's the same concept. But just think about that. I've never heard anyone say that before. Not that I come up with good comments. I don't most of the time, but in theory, if somebody had come up with the right worded patents for a spinnerbait back in the day, guess what?
Yeah.
We wouldn't have, it'd be the same conversation about spinnerbaits, about why you couldn't put, 2 willow blades on a spinnerbait, right, or whatever the heck it would be.
Yeah.
You know,
there'd be a company out there that would have the market cornered on double willow leaves, you know?
Yeah. We could all be driving Fords, Gators. There's all these different things, right?
Yeah.
All right, so Rob,
didn't mean to open up that can of worms.
No, but hey, no, listen, I kind of think it's cool. We haven't really gone into that much, and I don't know. I think it's worthwhile to talk about. This is all part of like what we do and what we make, and there's people out there that will say, they're like, oh, we can't talk about it. Can't talk about it. There ain't no one shutting Jig Squad down. We could talk about whatever the heck we want. Like. We're being honest and genuine, and at the end of the day, we are an industry of knockoffs, right? As a whole, for basically function of what we use. But I'm just going to make Rob's point from before. Rob said to me the other day, and here's the thing that stood out, and he kind of said it earlier tonight. If I don't have something new and different or a variant, what's the point of me trying to make it? Right. And so it's a good comment.
And I think a lot of your followers on that are more the hobbyist or whatever, and they're into it just for themselves. So they're going to come up with all kinds of crazy stuff and new ideas and that, and then, but if you're going to take it to the production level, then things change.
It does. It changes stuff. And I honestly believe that.
Just highlighted Michael's comment. Imitation is the highest form of flattery. Darn right. That's what I say.
So we kind of touched on. I'm going to tell you something.
What's that about?
he knows I'm going to do this. It's like he's baiting me. He knows I'm going to do this. So the Tesh boys, I call them, on the fly tackle. These guys are up in Wisco, and I only say so much. Like I don't show enough to show their ass entirely, but I say just enough to get at them so they know. So on the fly tackle, and I will do you right. I don't know if that's Ben or Brian. I think it's Brian, but I won't do you wrong in what I'm about to say. So they make some of the greatest walleye jigs in the country, but they also make hair jigs for smallmouth and all other types of things. And all I'll say is they don't have a website. They operate off of Facebook, word of mouth.
Right.
And I will say that over the last year, I've definitely learned, like every once in a while, I get a little thing from On the Fly Tackle. And usually it's them sending me an email making fun of my little jig box or hair jig box or something like that. So basically, there's a lot of imitation out there, and there's a lot of perspective of things. And On the Fly Tackle is just they're a father son.
Do they make a good like marabou?
They make a good jig. So if anyone's ever interested in a jig, On the Fly Tackle does make a good jig. You could find him on Instagram, but it's the whole thing that he has a lot of wisdom. I'm trying my darndest to get On the Fly Tackle to come on Jig Squad. So you guys, if you're on Instagram, blow him up, send him some messages, and tell him Kuda's trying to get you to go on Jig Squad. But he's been around the industry. He has a lot of perspective and a lot of thoughtfulness, and I appreciate them tremendously because of it. And they definitely don't have the exposure of their business, and they're phenomenal. They're a phenomenal duo and team. But he does this to tease me, I think. So Rob, let's do this. This will be our kind of last topic. So we kind of talked the other night. We were talking about that, about how, and I just want to talk about this because it's not controversial, but it is a challenge. So you guys, one of the things, everyone in chat, if you listen on replay, one of the things Rob and I were talking about the other day is we were talking about how all the people that I post pictures of the jigs that they make, or some, right? Some of these jigs are very elaborate, and there's a lot put into them. And Rob and I were talking, and it's like, it's crazy to watch that, because it's interesting to see how much of that design element time-wise goes into jig design that is part of the hobbyist end or part of the sale end. And the further part of that, what we were talking is that, and I'm not in the business, right? You guys know that I'm a hobbyist, right? I'm a hobbyist. I'm an ambassador. That's what I do. I don't sell. But the crazy thing is, time is money. So the more elaborate, I just laughed because I saw Ballin 21's comment, Z-Man is trash. Yeah, they suck, don't they? Oh, good old Z-Man. I do. I love their TRDs though. So when you guys are out there, if you're a designer and you're a hobbyist, or you just maybe sell to your friends or whatever it is, time is money. And some of these jigs are so elaborate, it takes extra time. And so there's a difference between a labor of love and making money, and how much you're getting materials for. And everyone's got a different ownership in this game. And like for everyone, it's a little bit different. And I remember a good friend of mine that happens to be in chat tonight, ironically enough, had said, if I'm paying fly shop prices for my stuff, I'm not making any money at what I do. And it's very interesting in concept, like what becomes volume, how much you have to buy, and what is just for yourself. Because if I'm making jigs for myself, somebody said, well, Murph, what if you make hair jigs, can I buy a dozen? No, that takes me too long to make, right? But you could go to somebody else and buy hair jigs, and they're going to be able to tie them faster. I make them for myself. But the elaborate things that people make, I mean, how many of you purposely don't go further down the line in terms of designs you offer if you're a salesperson or you have a company, because that's going to take extra time and that's just not part of it. You have to have a set profile.
The markup profit is not in, it's not relative to like real life, like or other businesses, I should say. If you're making if you're a woodworker and you're making a chair, the markup's a lot more than on fishing tackle, and as far as I'm concerned, spinner baits should be $12 to $14 and jigs should be $7. When you come down to the price and what goes into it, it's crazy. But you can't sell them like that,
The time, and it's funny. One, I don't know if he's still in chat. Fishing the 262. I think it's fishing the 262. Wisco boy, Andrew Sheehan, he's a good friend of mine. He was in chat at the beginning, but he's talked about that for a while. He goes, he airbrushes crankbaits. He'll make some walleye jigs, bucktail typically, but he's talked about that. Like he said, he's like, you know what? He said, for what people put into their time making jigs, they should be worth more,
Right.
And the funny thing is, and I'm not getting into the Randy Bluegills discussion. I just won't do it, right? But it's the whole concept of that, of like, how much is a custom jig worth? And now this is where speed of tying, speed of putting your jigs together, familiarity with your tools and products. This is why all that becomes important, because everything boils down to, how many you could put out in a certain amount of time. And, like for me, like even like family, like I'll just talk about from my end, right? People say like, well, Murph, why don't you, you got a great bluegill skirted jig. Why don't you put it out? I go, because it's not worth my time. You know what I mean? Like as soon as it becomes something that gives me stress, I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm walking a real line right now with Jig Squad, with finding those moments of where I want to take advantage of my part in this industry and what I want it to look like, and then that and work. And I'm going to be very careful about how I do it. And I'm proud of how I've done it so far. But for you, Rob, I mean, talk about it a little bit.
I'm kind of following that too. My youngest kid is 18. He just graduated high school last week. And my typical 9-to-5 job is I'm a contractor for the installation of window treatments, blinds, draperies, and all that stuff. I subcontract to other decorators and that. And I'm kind of phasing out of that, and I'm going more into the fishing. So for the last several years, I've just kind of kept it at a nice even pace that I could handle, grow it, and just wait for the time that I really want it to explode, because I'm a real family guy. I was at all my kids' stuff. I didn't want to have, I didn't want to be that dad that was coming home when the kids were in bed and then leaving before they woke up. So I pride myself in that. And now that, I got 2 girls in college and Zane will be in college now, I'm just going to put more time into fishing and it'll grow a little bit more. So.
Yeah. And, hey, guys, for everyone in chat, if you're watching on replay, I would be remiss not to make a little comment here about Mr. Angler Assets, Rob Danielson himself. But I just want to say, maybe for some of you, this isn't a thing, but for me, it's a big deal because you guys know I'm a high school educator. And Rob has been heavily involved with the Illinois high school bass fishing scene. And he's done a lot.
I like supporting the kids. That's for sure.
Yes. And I would be remiss not to bring that up, Rob, because I mean, it's cool seeing pictures of you with the captain's meetings or the coaches' meetings for the state of Illinois. And, I just can't.
I got to speak at Shields this year. That was pretty cool. And then like today, I call it a porch pickup. I had one of the kids from a local high school. He's leaving for Kentucky in the morning, or actually this afternoon.
That's so great.
he's got a custom color jig that he wants, and I made some up for him and left him out on the porch, and he swung by and picked them up. And
That's so great.
Yeah, I wish high school fishing was out there when I was 18 or 16.
Oh yeah, how about it?
Crazy how things. Those kids are so good now. It's ridiculous.
Yes,
so it's fun. It's fun seeing some of the college and high school kids just continuing on and getting bigger and better. And some of the kids have dreams to be on the elite circuit someday. So it's kind of neat.
They do. And I mean, I think, any type of time that goes towards the kids is a big deal to me. You know, I'm a father of 3 boys. And obviously I've been in education for 25 years. So it's,
speaking of high school, I got to say this because
my
friend said, okay.
I know it's happening. Don't say the name though.
What?
Don't say my high school's name.
I'm just going to say, my son played in the 3A state championship baseball game.
Okay.
2 weeks ago, and they lost. They came in second. They got beat by Nazareth Academy. Are you familiar with that?
I know where Naz is at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great game. And the kids at Chatham Glenwood had a great season. And a lot of people ask me, does your son fish? Well, he fishes a little bit, but he's had a ball. He's 6'7" and a lefty, and he pitches. So he's had a ball in his hand more than a fishing rod. So
southpaw. That's me. I'm a southpaw.
I had to give the shout out to the kids from Chatham Glenwood because they
good for them.
So had a good year.
Good for them. Well, I'll tell you something, Rob. It was really nice having you on, buddy. There's one thing I'm going to tell you that I want to. I think as we get into like winter, and if you do get the website going and everything else, I mean, I definitely would like to get you on again. And fairly, I'd like to get you on with. There's a couple other people that I know are big spinnerbait people. I think we should have like a takeover show one night, and maybe we get some of you guys. There's a couple of guys out there. Brian Schmidt would be one of them. I think it'd be kind of cool because Brian's spinner baits is with like marabou and with hair and stuff like that. So it's just a little something different. Definitely. It would be cool to kind of talk shop a little bit. And maybe I think that might be something we do this winter. We do a Jig Squad takeover show.
That'll work. Count me in. I'll be more than happy to do that.
And do some fun things. So just a little bit of shop talk here before we go, Rob. But so everyone listen, if you're interested in stickers, you guys know what to do. Message me on Instagram. You can email me. They're out there. I have a couple of magnets coming in. Gramps, I heard you say you want a pair. Like I said, the magnets are going to be $10 for the 2 magnets. If they all go, then I'll wind up trying to get more in time. But besides that, hit the like, hit the subscribe. We're on our way to 1,000, folks. If you're watching on replay or you're in the night and you're not subscribed, please subscribe. It helps the channel grow. I just want to put out good jig talk content, and even if we don't agree or we have varying thoughts on different things, we had some good talk tonight that I think a lot of people don't want to have conversations about. But yeah, I don't care. We're talking about anything here. So we have a couple of real cool shows coming up as well. Battle Baits is going to be joining us. I'm working on a good design friend of mine that I'm hoping to get on in July as well. Who else do we have coming on? Cumberland Lures is going to be coming up in the next month, 5 weeks. I'm trying to think. You guys are going to hear about it all on Instagram. I'm going to be posting about all these guys, but a lot of good things coming up. We're actually, I'm going to mention it now. The Thursday, I'll tell you the date right now. Let me look real quick. Thursday, July 14th. That is not the regularly scheduled show schedule week, right? So I think the 7th we got, so the 14th is not a regularly scheduled show week, but we're going to do a special iCast unveiling show for Do It Molds. So Brennan's going to be joining us on that. So we'll have 3 weeks of shows in a row in July. But on that show, we're going to do the unveilings of all the products. Do It's already tipping their hat at what some of those are, but they're going to come on. Brennan's coming on. They're going to do a full unveiling of everything they're going to be releasing at iCast. And that way you get to hear Brennan talk about it himself. So it'll be cool. There's a lot of exciting things coming. I actually think that we might try and get a few other other people to come on that evening to talk about some things too. But anyway, a lot of cool things coming. I appreciate you all a ton. I'm working on Mad Mind, Mike Murphy, working on cool stuff for the future of Jig Squad. I'm hopeful that we get Rob back on, talk spinner baits, and then talk about a possible shop next winter.
Count me in for that takeover show. We'll talk wire and
yes
and blades. So, hey, I just want to thank you very much for having me on the show. I appreciate everybody that was in the stream, and good discussion. And hopefully I made some guys want to go out and make their own baits. So that's where it all starts.
Yeah, guys, just a reminder, if you watch, all the links are down below for Rob. Find him on Instagram. If you're around Shields in Springfield, Illinois, you obviously have an opportunity to get his stuff right now, but then more to come in time. But check out the Instagram because you'll get to see some of the cool colors and spinner baits that he puts out.
I post some of the custom stuff that I do for local guys too once in a while. It's not all production stuff that I sell, but it's kind of neat to watch. So
and if you're really jonesing for something, you got to send them a message and make your requests, however you're gonna make them.
Yep, get a hold of me through Instagram. So it's Angler Assets. So
that's awesome. All right, so Rob, listen, we're gonna end this now, folks. But cool. stay in here, Rob, and then we'll talk afterward after I add the stream. But you guys, listen. I appreciate you tremendously. This is Jig Squad. Lots more to come. We appreciate you a ton. Peace. We're out.